So, welcome once again to another battle replay, and this one is pretty enormous. I believe in total the unit, well at least the man count, is around 30,000, so it might well be the biggest battle I've ever been a part of. And it is a 3 versus 5, and it is on Osgiliath, although the surrounding areas look more like the Easterling Plains than the surrounding areas of Gondor. But no matter. And as a scenario, it is obviously a custom scenario made by Horton, and he makes quite a lot of these scenarios, and they tend to be very large in scope, so hopefully we can do a few more of them and show a few more. Usually I haven't shown them in the past because they haven't really been in a state of being finished, but this one I feel is like basically finished, to be honest. There's only a few little tweaks that need to be made with regards to some of the terrain and such, but other than that we are good to go. Now obviously there are some rules associated with this. For example, the attackers, there are 5 attacking armies, one of which is flanking around. Now, the 4 that are in the city have to go one after the other, essentially. Now, the amount of time between these waves does go down each time. So, for example, the first wave has to wait longer before the second wave comes in and vice versa. I am the 4th attacking army, and I don't have to wait long at all before I can join the 3rd army. And the flanking army, they can attack towards the tail end of wave 2. So it really sucks if you're the first wave for the attackers. Now, obviously, in the defence of the city of Osgiliath, we have 3 human factions. We have Gondor, played by Donald Kingslayer. We have Arnor, they're around here somewhere, played by Horton. He's the one who made the scenario. And finally, we have, I'm sure some of their troops are around here somewhere. Yes, no, these are still more Arnorians. Where are we? There's got to be Dol Amroth around here somewhere. Right, let's go back up here. Surely they're around here somewhere. Yes, here we go. Well, we're getting into... where are they? Ah, here we are. My mistake. So we have Dol Amroth, played by Coldfront, and that's a name that you probably should recognise as well. I'm pretty sure he's going to be doing the defensive perspective, if you wanted to see that. But of course I'm doing the attacking perspective, and for the defenders, the job is easy. Victory for them just means surviving. If they're still standing at the end, they win. We have to destroy them while following the rules, and we'll just skip through the army compositions a little bit. So Donald, mainly these 3 defensive armies are full of quality. They've got Lasarnak Nobles, Shielded Fountain Guard, Gondorian Winged Swordsmen, Sons of Argonath, more Shielded Fountain Guard here, and regular Fountain Guard, tons and tons of the best units available, regular Fountain Guard as well. They do have a few lower tier units. I mean, Citadel Archers and Wardens of Minas Ithil are not lower tier, but there are a few Spearmen as well, so, these units are just there to sort of really bulk out the army and make sure the quality can do its job. Arnor is much the same story. They have a few units of Peacekeepers, of course, and, Arthur Day Knights. These aren't necessarily the best that Arnor has to offer, and Pikemen, but they do have the best as well. They've got a couple of units of Dunedain Knights, several units of Dunedain Bodyguard, and they've got Troll Slayers and Battle-Ready Dunedain as well. So really all of the best of Arnor, and of course it should come as no surprise that Dol Amroth are also bringing their best, and their best is very scary indeed. Dol Amroth Men-at-Arms and Tirith Ear Wardens are a little bit more sort of basic, but they also have Belfalas Marines for the Javelins, Tarnistian Guard, and then they have more Swan Knights, and of course they have the Haven Guard. There's some floating rocks up there, which I did notice in the battle there, but it's no real problem when it comes to these custom scenarios. But yes, so all 3 of these armies very, very much focused around quality, and that's one of the things that I did want to focus on, because I think I've given mass and numbers a little bit too much credit, and I wanted to show that quality like this can stand in the face of an enormous, numbers disadvantage and do well. Because this battle is very, very close towards the end, one way or the other, and that means, if one team had played slightly better, they could have swung it. And that's the important thing, and it's just important to see that quality can pay off. Now we have Cole here, and he's leading the first wave of Mordor, so he's got basically the worst army. As the waves carry on, the armies tend to get a little bit better. So Cole, he's got Orc Maulers, he's got Orc Raiders, he's got Orc Fodder. He's got very little in the way of very good units. He's got more Orc Fodder carrying ladders over there in the background, but he does have some units which aren't terrible. He's got some Uruks. And what's this? I think these are Raiders? Yes, they are. And his general is over here in an Uruk Bodyguard unit, so this is by far and away his best unit. It's the only one of his that's got hit points, and of course his army will get utterly mulched, but the important thing that he has to do is he has to give us a position that we can then launch from into the settlement. If we get caught in their range fire for too long, we don't stand a chance. And again, more of Cole's army back here. He's got more Orc Fodder, of course, and then he's got the standard Uruks, which are pretty much All of us have got a force of standard URCs. They are the bread and butter of Mordor, of course. Now, the second wave is the one that is over here, and that is played by Arnor to victory, although hopefully Arnor won't be going to victory this once. So, he's also got Orc Fodder, he's also got Orc Maulers, so again, he's got, his first line is pretty similar to Cole's, but as you go back, you start to notice a bit of an increase in his offensive capability. For example, he has got Mountain Trolls, whereas Cole does not. He's also got more URCs than Cole as you go through his army. You know, and he's also got some halberds as well, which is very, very important if you can. I believe he also has an archer unit, and Cole also does as well. They're very, very low tier archers though, sort of scouts and orc archers. His general is also in an URC bodyguard unit. That's not a bad unit to be in at all though. And then if we go back here, we have wave 3 of Mordor. No, that's still Arnold. Yeah, he's got some scouts. Here we have the third wave played by Mejt. I don't know. I'm not very good with that. But yes, his army is even better. Again, you can see Morannon units are starting to come in. Some Morannon bows and maulers and standard URCs make up quite a large portion of his force. And he also has some, he also has some standard URCs to be fair, and he's also got some maulers. But definitely much more quality on display here. Also got some archers, URC archers, and in the background here he has Olag High, the best of the trolls that Mordor have. And then he also has the troll catapult. So finally some artillery getting added to the mix, and that's going to be important. We need to use artillery well in the late game if we're going to overturn the obvious percentage disadvantage we have accrued up to then. There's also some more forces from Cole back here. And now we have my force, and my force, this gate here, you can't actually get through it, which is a bit of a shame. But this means my deployment zone is half in and half out, so I can deploy to help the Misty Mountains flanking around or the main army as much as I wanted. So I went about 2/3 of my army in the walls because we're going to take a lot of losses there and are going to need to follow in. Obviously I have Oleg High and a Troll Catapult as well. My army tends to be the one with the most quality here. So Morannon URCs, I've also got Temple Inquisitors, and I've also got some Temple Guard as well, which my general is in the Archer variety, or the Archer variant of the Temple units, the Black Numenorians. And I also have some Sauron's Will, again. They're not too durable, but they still do quite a lot of damage. And again, a lot of Morannon units. And then my reinforcement force going around the flank is going to be comprised of my URCs and also my archers, my Morannon bows, because I think they'll be more useful to them out there. And also I've got some standard URCs and some heavy maulers as well. So if we go over here to the flanking army, we have the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, and their force is not bad at all either. We have heavy goblin infantry in force, not bad against archers, bit of a tar pit, as they say, but also heavy goblin halberds here in force as well. So, a lot of standard units. His army isn't quite as good as mine. Obviously he's got some heavy goblin spears, but he does have some of his scary stuff like crossbows. They could be invaluable in the late game if we manage to get them trained in on a unit of Haven Guard or Sons of Argonath. Back here we also have some Mountain URC blades, slightly better units. Also some archers, so more ranged capability. And then back here we have the Orc bodyguards, which is where his general is, and then over here we have some Black URCs. He's also got some Blackback Mountain Berserkers hidden somewhere. So they will be very impressive, well, very important and impressive to use well. And then he also has a unit of Mountain Trolls over here. So I think it will be best. Obviously, Misty Mountains, they can't deploy yet, and it does take them quite a while to walk around. So the main force, the main action is going to be here for quite a bit. It's a very long battle, of course, so settle in. And yeah, I think I'll make a little cut for when Cole is really making his advance, because there's a little bit of a setup as we sort of get our armies in position to follow the wave structure that the battle demands. So yes, I shall see you at the start of the battle. So as we can see, the veterans of Osgiliath defending the city of the same name, firing into the advancing Orc forces, and obviously they are going to be in for a very, very cold reception indeed. Lots of fire arrows coming down on these maulers, carrying this ram. There's also artillery fire, although the more ammo they expend on this first wave, the better it will be for us in the long run. I believe he's trying to set fire to the ram, but I'm pretty sure...
Command of the castle.
Thank you, announcer. I'm pretty sure that throughout the entire battle, no damage was done to the ram, so I'm not sure if, as it stands, they're indestructible for whatever reason. But yeah, the ram was not damaged despite these fire arrows, and you can just see them streaking in. Maulers are honestly not a bad unit provided you get them into melee, but against archers they are dreadful, and they are being focused down very effectively. You can see the bodies just underneath the water, or at least I can. I don't know what YouTube compression is going to do for the quality, to be honest. I've had my trials with that. But yes, the maulers are now moving forward. Only a few of them have stayed back for the ram, and as we can see, Cole is going to be sending forward just sort of all his units in loose formation, trying to make sure that any ammo that is expended on him is as inefficient as possible. It is going to be difficult, though. His army is
The
obviously...
enemy is no longer in command of the castle.
Are they not? Well, we win then. But yes, his army is obviously going to be cut to pieces. He will not be here for the end of the battle, but what he does may well set us up for victory. All of these arrows. Now, getting onto these walls is not going to be easy. Well, I say that. All the veterans of Osgiliath have left, but certainly they will man these walls, because if we can get onto these walls, we don't have many archers between us, to be honest with you, compared to the enemy. But if we can get up there, you know, as I've said before, in a situation like this, any mistakes the defenders make are far amplified when you compare them to the mistakes the attackers make. We have a lot more leeway in how we can approach these situations. Obviously, these maulers have been cut to pieces. There are only 44 of them left. And unfortunately, this is Osgiliath, so for the time being, these buildings here are still sort of not there. They don't exist, so to speak. They're just cosmetic. However, because this is the full version of Osgiliath, unlike the river crossing I did, a few days ago, it's probably over a week by now, but this wall is solid. Obviously, people are standing on there. He's got the Lasarnak nobles up here, so they will be able to cut down anyone as they come up pretty quickly. Very nice looking unit. I do like the axes, I must say. But, you know, the ram is still slowly advancing, the ladders are still advancing with the orc fodder. It's just important that all of these ladders and the ram gets into position, and we can just make our position as open as possible. We need options. If we get bottlenecked, we're obviously going to be destroyed pretty quickly. As we can see, these orc fodder are not really designed to get kills. They really are just designed to be a pain for the attackers. I mean, they're using archers on them. So as I've said before, there are 3 units, so they have technically already paid for themselves, but this is a scenario, so really we haven't spent any money. We got our armies assigned to us, so it's not quite the same thing when you look at units of this caliber in this context. Ooh. As we can see, the ladder is here, and orc maulers, you know, if you can get them into melee, they can do a surprising amount of damage. And up here, there are still Dunedain bodyguards, so if you can catch them out and do a bit of damage to them, that's very good. And orc maulers will honestly not trade too ineffectively with Arthur Dane men-at-arms. They're nothing too special, at least not compared to some of the other units the attackers have. Or defenders, I should say. Look at these shields. There is something to Arnor. I think eventually they might actually be renamed to Arthur Dane, and the Kingdom of Arnor will be split into its 3 separate parts of Eriador, Arthur Dane, and Angmar. Angmar, of course, being an evil faction, the Rudour, the Men of Rudour. But that's for the future. And here, the Arnorians will hold. They will still win, of course, but it's all about trying to do as much damage as possible, and we need to really get mass in there. We need to sort of bubble out a little bit so we're not just dying one at a time. But yes, that will continue onwards. The frame rate might drop a little bit just because of the amount of men on the field, but that should clear up as it goes along. As we can see here, again, this is a real nightmare. Shielded Fountain Guard in V formation. Just going to poke any orcs that fight in here to death. They are fighting to the death. Though, of course, these orc raiders, and if Cole can just sort of pull these Shielded Fountain Guard out of position, do a little bit more damage to them than is convenient for the defenders, this will hold us in good stead in the long run, because they won't be able to hold this gate for the whole battle. That just won't happen with the amount of mass we can bring to bear, but for the first wave, they certainly will. The first wave is all about softening the enemy up for the kill. And these axemen, I should say, are going to be engaged by Orc Fodder, a unit of 142. Again, just engaging them because, of course, ladders are something that can be used by the enemy. We don't want to be flanked by Lasarnak nobles. They will very quickly deal with the vast majority of Cole's army. And Lasarnak nobles, they have a good deal of bite to them. Look at this. The Orc Fodder just being chopped down as soon as they crest the wall. And there are Sons of Argonath up here as well. There's more ladders on the other side of the gate, but Sons of Argonath even more dangerous. Simply because we're not likely to get many kills on them at all. Very, very strong unit. Very cool armour as well. As we can see, I think these are raiders. Yeah, Orc raiders. Slightly better than the fodder, but certainly not to the extent that it's going to be required to dislodge the Sons of Argonath. Now it looks like the other gate over here is going to be broken very soon. Again, this is good. It's all about establishing our position this first wave. As the defenders look on, you can see all those Dunedain Rangers just looking over the wall. not wanting to expend their ammo on this rubbish. They want to wait until... We can use that bridge as well, but it would be suicidal with the shot these Rangers have on them. There's a trebuchet in the background, and over here we can see that Arnor is holding this gate, with some Dunedain Wardens up front and Arnor gate guards behind. This is very good. The shield wall at front provides the mass, and the pikes behind provide the range. This is a very good defensive position they've set up. But again, they're falling back from this position. They don't fancy going through here, and I don't blame them, to be honest with you, although going through this position over here is not exactly a walk in the park either. 2 shielded Fountain Guard units. No pikes, but the shielded Fountain Guard are a much better spear unit than the Wardens are. As we can see here, the Orc fodder is just being easily chopped down by these very elite men. If we go up here to the wall, we can see that these Orc fodders are routing, and they're just sort of stood in midair, very awkwardly. They're just going to stay in place. And as we can see over here, these Orc Raiders have actually managed to sort of push onto the wall. And again, this is due to the Sons of Argonath not having very many men in the unit, so they have actually been damaged quite a bit. Well, I say quite a bit, they've only lost 5 men, but that's still sufficient, and I think the Gondor player realises that he's losing men unnecessarily, so he's sending up the Winged Swordsmen to reinforce the Sons of Argonath. And those Zweihanders are going to be very, very effective at chopping over these Orcs. Again, Orc Raiders, they can form shield wall, but that's not particularly useful in this situation. They really are just here as cannon fodder. And they're doing that job well. I mean, just the fact that they've killed a few Sons of Argonath, almost 10, is more than a good return on their investment. You know, that's really the one area in which we're doing quite well, though. If we look down here, interestingly enough, the shielded Fountain Guard are starting to bubble out of this gate, which is actually good for us. It means we can try and surround them, sort of a crescent moon shape surround, and do more damage to them than would be comfortable. But even so, there's nothing really we can do to stop them if they want to advance. I mean, there's nothing really we could do if they wanted to advance and try and sort of defend the river edge. I mean, that would be interesting. They could set up their siege equipment out here, try and shoot across the river. But as it is, we have ORCS, you know, and if we have a look at Cole's army, he's still got men in reserve, so it just goes to show how big these armies are. This is only the first army the defenders have to deal with, so the balance of power is very even as well, but they've lost 0% of their men as it stands, and we've been thrown off these walls by the Arthur Dane men-at-arms. You know, still very healthy as well. The Dunedain bodyguard are back there, and the Dunedain Wardens, there are a couple of corpses over there, but really the main event is over here, and as you can see, Cole is now sending up some Orc fodder, the first Mordor wave. Honestly, this wall, pretty successful, I would say. I mean, the Orc fodder are just going to engage them again, bleed these Sons of Argonath just a little bit more. As we can see over here, these Lasarnak nobles are coming down the ladder. You know, this is one of the things that you can do as a defender. You can be aggressive, and I think he sees that the shielded Fountain Guard are in danger of being surrounded in that crescent moon shape, so he's going to send his Lasarnak nobles down, and he's going to engage these units from the side, preventing the surround in all effect, because these units will fall by the wayside to such elite axemen pretty quickly indeed. Those Orc fodder getting up onto the walls. Shielded Fountain Guard want to retreat, but again, they can't really turn their backs on the enemy, otherwise they will take more damage than they would like. And here we can see the Lasarnak nobles covering their retreat, getting into the face of these Orcs. They're routing. You know, this is a routing unit, so they just need to get through them, get them out of the way. They are being quite aggressive, though, particularly seeing as this is Uruk bodyguard now, so Cole's general is up into the fight, and these Uruk bodyguard should beat the Lasarnak nobles if they're being this aggressive, if they're overextending themselves. The Uruk bodyguard is the one unit of genuine quality our first wave has, and it is now up near the gates. Look at the shields from the shielded Fountain Guard. Such an intimidating defense to try and break through. Yes, the frames abandoned me a little bit. These axes really getting into the faces of these Uruks, but these Uruks should do quite well against the Lasarnak nobles. Victory might seem certain, but they will be cut down. This is the problem with being aggressive as the defender. You can often find a few of your units just falling away, and if this turns out to be a mistake in the late game, well, it's going to count against the defenders. Like I say, mistakes for the defenders are often amplified. We go here, back into this sort of covered wall. Again, Orc fodder is just sort of jumping into the Winged Swordsmen and Sons of Argonath and being cut down one by one. So again, this is not fantastic, but, you know, we are, you know, this first wave was only ever meant to be fodder. And we've established our position. We've got Uruks now climbing up onto the wall, engaging these Arthur Dane men-at-arms. But, you know, we have our position, and that's all Cole can give us. You know, the second wave has got a little bit more in terms of deadly units. If we look here down at the gate, these Orc fodder are shaken. going up against these Dunedain Wardens. Again, the same model as Battle Ready Dunedain, only they have shields and spears. There was a unit in Moss which had these shields as well. They were called the Northern Line Volunteers, only they had swords. Now we can see the Dunedain Rangers have started to open up. What are they firing on, I wonder? Well, there's a unit of Orc Raiders back there, but that's not a huge danger. And Cole is sending up basically the last of his army now. So again, there are many dead Orcs. Oh, there are some Morannon Orcs, I believe that was it? Yeah, so Cole did have one unit of Morannon Orcs who are now in the fight. Got a little bit more bite to them. But if you look over here, these Lasarnak nobles are starting to fall away a bit. So their brave sacrifice to make it so their shielded Fountain Guard brothers could get back into the defence. You know, it's going to be interesting to see whether that was worth it. Shielded Fountain Guard, of course, a very strong defensive unit, but Lasarnak nobles offer a bit of bite, which could have been useful later on in the battle. But you know, if they try and run away now, it's game over for them. I mean, if we look back over here towards the gate, they could be surrounded if we're honest. But it does look like the Morannon Orcs, oh no, those are Orc Raiders. The Morannon Orcs are just sort of waiting their turn, which is interesting. But Cole is focusing more heavily on this gate, which I do believe is probably the way to go. Simply because he's done quite a bit of damage to these Sons of Argonath already, at least relatively speaking, in terms of the units that he's thrown at them. The return that he's got has been pretty good. The Winged Swordsmen, a couple of them have died as well. A few of these floating Orc fodders that are routing again. But again, it's been interesting. We can see again Cole moving up several of his units. I think he does have an archer unit somewhere, but they are not here yet. Again, you can see these Morannon ORCS. They should do a little better against the Sons of Argonath, but they are coming under arrow fire. They won't get too many kills, but they should at least not fold like wet tissue paper. If you look here, still a few Lasarnak nobles climbing down this ladder, but they are now being dealt with. This Uruk bodyguard, it's looking a little bit unhealthy now, but they are also the only unit that can claim to have destroyed a whole other enemy unit. We can see some Orcs are even just bypassing them completely and climbing up the ladder. There's another unit of Sons of Argonath there waiting though. So Gondor is certainly taking the lead on this wall, and on the other side there's a little bit less room on this gate to really manoeuvre. There's only one area you can put up ladders, and there's one gate and that's it. But Arnor are doing that. But Orc Raiders, they have forced their way onto the wall pretty efficiently. Well, maybe not efficiently, effectively might be a better word for that. But yes, it's mainly because Arthedain Men-at-Arms are there, and their Dunedain Bodyguard are there, but they're not very big in number. The Arthedain Men-at-Arms, however, they don't really have the bite to kill these troops as quickly as the Winged Swordsmen and Sons of Argonath do. Having said that, they will still obviously be victorious against Orc Raiders. But again, just pushing them back a little bit. Again, small victories. And as we can see from here, the Orcs. Again, the frame rate is a little bit choppy, but that should clear up as the battle goes on, and I think the quality is ultimately worth it. The Orc fodder are wavering in the face of these Dunedain Wardens. Again, the Arnor Gate Guards have not needed to get involved yet. Such a terrifying pike unit. Dunedain Wardens have lost a few men. Not too many, though. And again, these Orcs are now routing. But just as quickly as one unit routs, another unit is there to engage. This is what the defenders have to deal with. This is a long battle as well. So, as we kill, the more we can claim that our assaults are worth it. It's one of the nice things about playing as Mordor. You don't really have to care. Just charge in. What's the worst that can happen? Oh no, dead Orcs. Yeah, if we look here, the Sons of Argonath, they lost another man. These perpetually routing Orc fodder are still there. Over here there's a bit more of a battle going on. The Lasarnak nobles down below have fallen almost completely, but the ladder and the gates are secured. So once again, Gondor shuts the door, being the first line of defence. Dol Amroth, they're going to be guarding the outer wall with the Misty Mountain flanking force with a little bit of support, but it's mostly going to be them, so that's why they haven't gotten involved yet. And they are also providing the backup troops. So it's going to be interesting, but yes, Cole's army is not looking fantastic. There are Urks here now, standard Urks. So again, there are still some units of well, not genuine quality, but there are some decent units here. We see here the Sons of Argonath, though. Certainly one of my favourite looking units. They look really, really nice. Again, with their blades. But if it comes to units, ironically, I actually think the Sons of Argon might be my least favourite looking Gondor shock unit. Despite looking amazing, I think I do prefer the Winged Swordsmen just because of their weapons. I think that the more heavy duty Zweihanders are just more my speed than a longsword. But again, if we see here, just more Uruks climbing up the ladder. And it is relentless. They're being attacked by arrows again. I'm not surprised by that. Uruks, it's much more worthwhile to shoot them with archers because they are a decent unit and they're being shot in the back, so I don't think their shield value sort of confers their deflect chance. Again, it's hard to know. I mean, the hidden stats are something which I should devote a little bit more time to, if I'm honest. But again, like I've said before, I'm not really too eager to get big into that until all of the factions are here and we can really start talking about the balance between factions in a little bit more detail. And if any of you are wondering why I'm not doing the faction overviews yet, that is why. I mean, I did say in the channel update video not so long ago that's what I'm going to be doing, but I did get a comment asking about them, and that I'm waiting until all the factions are in, because, you know, it doesn't make sense for me to do them all now, only for me to run out and then restart them later. I'd rather do them all while they're still relevant. Again, you can see these routing troops, these Uruks climbing onto the walls, being killed very quickly, not quite as quickly though as the Orc fodder. They are at least getting a few men, a few boots on the ground as it were, but even then they're just being greeted by a hail of axe and sword blows. So the Gondorians doing very well. Let's go check in on the Arnorians, shall we? As we can see, still the Dunedain Wardens essentially holding their own. There is a case for saying maybe the Arnor Gate Guard should be pushed up just a little bit more so their pikes are also attacking the enemy. Obviously you don't want to push outside the gate with them, but even so. There's Orc fodder routing in there. They're warmed up, they can't get away because of the units that are there. There's also Orc Raiders. Defeat is a distinct possibility. Some of the Wardens at the front are being bloodied up though, and that's what we like to see. There are dead Wardens as well, you can see them. This wall. Honestly, this wall is looking like probably the best bet for the moment. If I was Cole, you want to get another unit, and it does look like he's going to be doing that. Again, it's just Orc Raiders, but the unit that's up here, the Arthedain Men-at-Arms, they're not quite as scary to go up against. And if we can just make our gaps, if we look back over here, we can see this unit of Uruks is the last from Cole. In the background, Arnor to Victory is setting up on the island. He actually misclicked and sent his men into the river, but the wave is not allowed to advance until Cole is largely depleted. Again, the rules are a little flexible in when the waves are allowed, but essentially all of Cole's army needs to be engaged and fighting before wave 2 can engage, and that's when Arnor to Victory will advance his army, of course. And there's a bit more in terms of quality about his army. He's got trolls for one, so I mean that the opportunity exists for us to try and force our way through a section. Obviously there aren't many options, so the defenders should have all of them covered, but if they get a little bit lax, you never know. These Sons of Argonath. They've lost a few as well. These Uruks have fought bravely, considering the death they were going into. Look down here, the Uruk bodyguard is still in one piece. A lot of them are bloodied up, but they're still alive. And again, Orc Maulers being sent up. So these Orc Maulers should do pretty well, of course. Gondor, well, I say pretty well, cost effective. They obviously will get absolute, oh my god, look at this frame rate. So many men on the field. But yes, they won't win, obviously, but they should at least inflict a few more casualties on these units which have already been in the fight. The Gondorian Winged Swordsmen, there were just over 100 of them at the start. There are now 82. So slowly but surely, attrition may start to bite the enemy. Of course, there comes a point in the sort of the final assault where attrition will start to bite us as well. But look in the background there are some Arthedain Knights being committed. So they obviously feel as though this is the area they need to defend with a little more gusto, but then the Arthedain Knights are actually not going over there. They're going to reinforce this area, which is what I was going to say is probably the smart move, considering these Arthedain Man-at-Arms are looking a little haggard, and his Dunedain bodyguard, they're up here. They need to get off this wall, to be honest with you. They're not getting good shots, and they are, you know, they're kind of getting caught in melee. Hit points being bled off them slowly. These Orc Raiders are routing. Now that the Arthedain Knights are here, though, we're not going to break through on this section. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame. If we look over here, Uruk bodyguard, more Uruks being committed. So again, this wall is the one we're going for. If we see there are actually Dol Amroth archers. They've got the armour upgrade, so they look like the men-at-arms. And the veterans of Osgiliath have that too, if you noticed at the start. But yes, I feel as though the Dol Amroth archers who have used up their ammo shooting into the sides of our armies, they feel as though you know, we've made a few casualties appear on this wall, and now they're just sort of getting some bit of extra manpower up here, sponge away some of the damage on archers, and hopefully do it that way. So if we look at the percentages killed, we're obviously very far behind. But again, I did mention at the top of the battle that it was very close, so again, this is to be expected in this sort of battle. The defenders are going to pull ahead, but then the attackers eventually are going to make their numbers shown, and then it's who has made the smarter plays up to that point. Again, winged swordsmen, they've taken a few losses though. This is the section of line I would go for at the moment, but these maulers I think are routing, they don't fancy the fight. But yes, if we look back over to the other side of the river, well, Arnold to Victory is already here in fact. So yes, we can see that he's obviously sending up his worst units first, so we've got another force of orc fodder, reinforcing what little is left of Cole's army admittedly. More fodder. The fact that some of them are dead though means they have soaked up some arrow fire, which in the late game is going to help us more. These orc fodders are going to try and reinforce these raiders, which are still fighting against those Dunedain wardens, but again they're slowly dying. Wardens may have hit points, but if I just sort of don't go zooming right in case the game really tanks. Dunedain wardens may have hit points, but as I mentioned in the Lake Evendim Civil War, they don't have the heaviest of armour, although if I'm honest that isn't going to remain a problem for too much longer, because there is, you know, the Dunedain wardens are the subject of a bit of a change in the upcoming patch, so that should be interesting to see. And also if we look back here, the Arthedain man-at-arms are being sent in as a sort of secondary line in front of those Arnor Gate guards. So again, we're not going to break through here, but we are bleeding them. Slowly and surely these fodders trying to do something with their spears. See those orc raiders just routing. Look at all the dead bodies though. I mean, it's not quite as severe as you might think, but there are also a good amount of them in the water. And if we're honest, most of them are actually up on the walls. Arnold to Victory? My word, look at that frame rate. Again, I apologise for that a little bit. It will get better, you know, as the battle goes on. It's just the nature of doing a battle like this when there are a lot of men fighting. It really can't be helped. As we can see, the orc fodder being committed. Again, I think that the idea behind this was he saw that the shielded fountain guard sort of bubbled out of the gate before, so he's going to send in a unit of orc fodder to try and get them to do that again, and hopefully we can do a good deal of damage to these guys, because the shielded fountain guard are very, very tough. Trying to break your way through them is not an easy endeavour, especially if they stay in position. But if we can get them out of position, we can do a bit more damage to them, and that's going to be key. Stuff like that is going to be how we win this battle, if indeed we do. But again, the frame rate, I assure you, was far worse in the actual battle. But as we can see here, the Dol Amroth archers providing a good cushion for the Sons of Argonath and the Lasarnak nobles. But for the time being, we're not going up onto this wall here. We are, however, going over here. These orc fodders again, occupying these men, these winged swordsmen. I think those are maulers down there. Indeed they are. So again, only 127 of them. They should fare a little better than fodder, even if they're already wavering. It can't be helped. Again, the winged swordsmen holding firm in the face of fodder, but then not a lot won't hold firm in the face of fodder. My word, look at all the orcs on the field. We can see these orc fodder units really trying to do their best against the Dunedain wardens. But again, it's just a case of biding your time. The walls are now very thickly defended by Arthedain knights, along with the men-at-arms of the same name, and that's going to mean getting through them is going to be tough. Especially if they've got peacekeepers, they've got troll slayers in the background over here, and they still have a lot of units of quality. But here in the second wave is where we can hopefully force them to feel this outer defence a little bit more. We were able to establish ourselves a little bit on the first wave, and now is when we need to make that count. And of course, at the tail end of this wave is when we can start attacking the outer walls, or at least what remains of the outer walls of Osgiliath, of course. So if we look over here, again, Arnold's Victory committing quite a lot into this area, and he's starting to sort of bow the lines a little bit. So I think just in order to make sure the lines stay solid, he was, you know, Donald Kingslayer committed a unit of Fountain Guard and at least had them in reserve. So there's no real chance that the fodder is going to get through here, but you know, the Fountain Guard. If we look in the background over there, the siege is raining down on the orcs as they advance. Again, orc raiders, more units that aren't really fantastic, But again, as this wave goes on, Arnold to Victory will be able to commit some of his units, which are a little bit more scary. We see these Orc Maulers just waiting their turn, waiting to get up on that ladder, although honestly I would wait a little bit, considering the defences that are up there. You'll just be sending them to their deaths. And death is fine, but cost-efficient death is the most important. Like in the background there you can see the dams, which just mean we can sort of cycle around the maps. They're on both sides, although on that side no one deployed. So it would be interesting to see if like the defenders had cavalry, and they could sort of go right around the map to try and engage the outer attackers. And of course I think the gates would open for them. So that would be an interesting dimension if they so chose to add that. But again, you don't want to fuck with the balance too much, because this map is actually surprisingly balanced from what I can tell. Again, with these Orc fodders, defeat will always seem certain for them. But time after time they will advance. It's like the tide coming in on the walls of Osgiliath. Will the flood defences hold? Well, we shall see. You can see all those Orc fodders which are routing. Actually, they're not routing, they're stood there. That's interesting, that's a strange one. Oh my word. Look at the frames. The frames! Let's have a look down here. Again, not much has changed, although we are being pushed back a little bit. Orc fodders being killed by shielded Fountain Guard. Not really much of a surprise. Again, we go in here. We can see that they're Uruk bodyguard from Cole, so he decided to just commit his general, throw them up on the wall, see if they can do a little bit of damage. They will actually cause a gap to appear with their hit points if Arnold to Victory wanted to send some units up, and indeed he is. He's sending up some Orc Raiders to follow them in. So again, not a bad play. And if we look over here, nothing going on. So this ladder is currently vacant. All the action is located at the gates, to be honest, at the moment. And there are routing Orc Maulers. It's just a fact of life when you play as Mordor. Routing units, more Orc Raiders being committed. Arnold to Victory still has a good healthy amount of troops at the back though. Also some Uruk Archers, and it's worth saying that over here we can see stuff like Wardens of Minas Ithil, Gondor Citadel Archers, kind of exchanging fire with the Orc Archers. In addition to this ballista, if we can get this ballista off the field, the siege weapons we have later on will be a good deal safer. The anti-fun device that is the ballista. And again, the very frame-riddled advance of Mordor continues. Trying to force our way through this outer defence is brutal. But again, all this carnage will be worth something in the end. This is simply how you have to play a 5 versus 3, because you have such a heavy advantage in terms of numbers. It's really on you to just attack. More Orc Raiders. Just going up to the... well, what is this? That is Cole's general. Dead on the walls. So, yep. That is basically Cole's army almost gone, I would say. I mean, he's not... It hasn't said that his army's fled the field just yet. Really, I think this is our best bet, because the Dunedain Wardens are isolated a little at the front. If we can take them out, it will be very good for us. And then we can move on to the Arthedain Men-at-Arms. Now, the Arnor Gate Guards that are behind them in the background there with their blue cloaks, they will be very tough to get through, simply because they're the only pikes that have hit points. But again, we're Mordor. We can use our weight to sort of make it so they have to engage us in closer quarters. But we need to get those Dunedain Wardens out of the way first. And it is slow going, but it is happening. They are falling. And if we look over here, these Orc Maulers, they're still there. They're sort of just stood on the walls. Seems like they're just waiting to jump off. But again, that wall looks pretty damn secure. At this point, I would suggest that maybe waiting until the later waves, perhaps, for this wall. Try and knock it down with a catapult, because indeed you can do so. In fact, I think that's the only area you can do that, and opening up another area would be most helpful. Of course, this wall you cannot knock down. God, there's so many men on the field. Again, the biggest battle I did previous to this was the Caer Andros, the new Caer Andros siege, where it was 22,000. This is closer to 30. And of course, that is just... It takes its... the poor game engine. It takes its toll. But yes, as you can see here, the wall assault has again been thrown off, so it is really the gates where we're focusing our assaults. Orc Raiders' defeat seems certain. Some of the shielded Fountain Guard have fallen. They aren't actually in shield wall. At least it doesn't look like it. They're a little bit more spread out than that. This does increase their offensive abilities somewhat, because it means they're able to sort of close in a little bit more. But it does mean that they aren't quite sort of leveraging their full defensive advantage, which is important for us in that swirling vortex of orcs. We just need to get more kills. Oh, what's this over here? It's hard to tell if more units are getting up onto the walls because of those perpetually routing ones blocking the ladders, but I believe in fact they are. Yes, they are. More orc raiders being sent to the slaughter, bloodying up more Sons of Argonath as they do it though. So if we look in the background, Arnold to Victory is going to be sending in more units, more ORCS. He still has his trolls in the background, but as they cross the river, that's prime targets for the trebuchets. But again, as long as they don't have that ammo in the late game, oof, a direct hit there. Not good. Look at this though. Breaking through this defense is daunting, no matter who you are, because all of these units pretty much are elite. I mean, you've got Fountain Guard, you've got Sons of Argonath, you've got Dunedain, you've got Arthur Dane Knights, you've got Arnor Gate Guards, and Dol Amroth has not even committed to the fight yet. And the fact that this is close just shows you how many orcs we brought to the field. Of course, our armies do get greater in quality as time goes on. My word. And hopefully the frames will get greater in quality as we go on. So if we see there, you know, the orcs, they're actually making their presence felt a little bit more on this gate because of how thick their attack is. They're not being cut down one at a time like those who are going up the ladders. So that should stand us in good stead. Arnold to Victory doing his best to make his presence felt in the same way that Cole did. And so far I'd say that our attacks have gone okay. I mean, if you look at the percentages, that paints a picture of very much not okay. Nearly a third of our total forces are gone, only 6% of theirs. But they have far fewer than we do. I would say that the defenders have certainly done a good job though. The temptation for a defender, I always feel, is to neglect your outer walls a little bit. To send in your unit slightly lesser. Like you saw the Arthur Dane Men-at-Arms, they count as, in this situation, a lesser unit for what the defenders have. However, if you pack your outer defences and walls with units like Sons of Argonath, Winged Swordsman, Shielded Fountain Guard, you can really make the attackers pay right off the bat. And that is certainly what Gondor in particular has managed to do here. You can just see all of the dead orcs. Really, they've only lost one unit completely, and that was that Lasarnak Nobles unit, which charged down the ladder to cover the retreat of the Fountain Guard. However, if you look over here, well, we're being forced back a little bit again. But these Shielded Fountain Guard, if we look here, one of them's got 110 men in the unit, the other one's got 109. A few casualties have been had, and the regular Fountain Guard is in the background in Spear Wall. Slightly better in terms of offensive capabilities then. But yes, if we look over in the background there, the next column of Arnold to Victory's army is arriving. No rest for the weary. Or the wicked. Again, part of the reason why the frame rate is so bad is these armies in the background are sort of jostling around, moving, and I'm, you know, that my additional 1/3 of my army is reinforcing the Misty Mountains. But of course, eventually we shall strike from two directions, and then the enemy will have a choice to make, because they are going to need to cover both of them. I mean, Dol Amroth is in perfect condition still, so he will still be able to hold the outer wall. It is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. The Orc Raiders, there are still a lot of them, but defeat seems certain. If we look over here, you can see that these men are in combat atop the walls. Or are they? It's hard to tell. They're just sort of waving their swords around. You can see these Orc Maulers, they're shaken as well. They're sort of just hanging around. I think they're waiting for the ladders, or at least the forces on top of the wall, to sort of vacate the premises a little bit. And they may need to. They may need to reinforce other parts of their line. Now more Uruks are arriving. Look at them. With their makeshift armour. But they are certainly more scary than the raiders and the fodder that have been attacking these wardens so far for the majority of this second wave. Again, it's a very choke pointy battle. At least at the start it is a very linear battle. Similar to the Moria one I posted last. And if you're wondering where the patch update goes, I'm not going to do that just yet because I don't want to give false information. I don't know the complete information of what's going to be in the next patch. I just know what's going to be affected. I just don't know to what extent. For example, the trolls, which, you know, they were changed and now they're going to be changed again before the release, just to sort of make sure that the balance is just right. Not too OP, not too UP, underpowered. But yes, trolls are getting, in relative terms, a buff. They will be stronger, which is good to hear. Everyone likes trolls. You know what else everyone likes? A solid frame rate. But such things are not for us, nay. Not the ones who take to the field with tens of thousands of orcs. Again, this will clear up as the battle goes on, I've little doubt, but sadly Arnold to Victory's army needs to die at a greater rate than it is doing for this to happen. Of course his army will fall away. Not quite as quickly as the previous one that Cole was commanding. Again, how tightly packed the enemy, well, how tightly packed the armies are doesn't really help. Again, if we look in the background to see, across the river you can see that most of Arnold to Victory's troops have been committed. The mountain trolls are now coming up. Again, Uruk halberds are now there. More Uruks. Still some maulers down here, but most of Arnold to Victory's army is now coming across. Which means, of course, that the outer assault can also begin shortly. I believe actually that's what's causing the dips in frame rate. You can see our army sort of getting in position with our ranged, and then we're going to follow that up with our foot-based units. Look at the Arnorians. In fact, what is going on here? This is a move that I would not recommend. Dunedain Rangers, even if they're out of ammo, they are going to get slaughtered if they go down there. They're not a heavy-duty unit at all. Although I'll just be welcome for more men to die so the frame rate increases. But yes, they are going to get cut to pieces by, well, those Orc Raiders are routing. There are Orc Maulers though. Orc Maulers ready to be deployed. Rangers, quite infamous at the moment. Oh dear. Now I see why. They're trying to get off the wall. Because the catapults, wherever it may be, or is it the catapult? I'm sure Arnold to Victory doesn't have a catapult, which must mean it's the enemy catapult, is it? Yes, it is. So they just destroyed their own Dunedain Rangers. And sort of left them... Oh, come on, frames, please. And left them with sort of less ways of getting up. So these Dunedain Rangers are going to be destroyed. Oh no. Well, we'll take every bit of friendly fire we can get, although that catapult side shooting into Arnor's army is going to be a problem. I mean Arnold to Victory, of course, not Arnor. It will be a problem for Arnor if they are set upon in such a way. Here we can see some more Uruks. Here come the trolls. Charging in with their cudgels in the air, and the Uruks are following them. And this is good, you know, it's good to see when a player backs their trolls up. I mean, I'm not sure they're going to get through here. Again, let's try and go in a little closer and hope it doesn't crash. So yeah, we can see that the trolls, they're going to be cut down, particularly by the Fountain Guard, the regular version, quite quickly, but they are forcing their way through somewhat. And with the backup of the Uruks, you know, they could disrupt the formation enough to get a decent amount of damage done to these men. Gondor's finest, that stand in the face of poor odds. Although it must be said that in terms of gameplay, they're standing in the face of odds, they can manage just fine. The Fountain Guard are very, very serious business. Just look at all those orcs there. Again, we're not going up onto this wall just yet. The Sons of Argonath are still there. And we've done damage to them, so hopefully that will tell in the late game. Yes, this is a very, very long battle indeed. We are essentially on part 2 of 4. And of course part 3 onwards is where we start to engage them from a few more sides. In fact, will the frame rate be any better over here, I wonder? I'm curious. Doesn't look like it. Well, actually, not too bad. There is movement at least. But yes, as you can see, I'm sending up both my units of Moran on bows to support the Mountain Uruk archers and the other ranged forces that the Misty Mountains has. And one problem that we will have, of course, is enemies are going to be able to return fire on us just as much as we're going to be able to fire on them. So if we look down here, we can see that rangers of all sorts, Dunedain Rangers and Nimrodel Rangers just behind, are going to be firing back at us, and we have no choice really but to engage them. The good thing, however, is that they have less ammo than us, so if we can weather the storm, we will still have archers left afterwards, and hopefully they won't. Now if we look over here, this is the gate that I am going to be going through. The Misty Mountains are going to be going through the other gate that we have the option of going through. And Dol Amroth men-at-arms are going to be forming the front line, and there are also some Ed Holland halberdiers that are going to be ready to come in. Obviously Coldfront's army is basically untouched up to this point. That will change. There are Troll Slayers. Their arc, however, is not too favourable for them. If I were them, I mean, we would try and focus them down, but they are strong enough to sustain themselves under arrow fire normally. And Troll Slayers are definitely the sort of thing you want to use the ammo of wisely. They don't have the they don't have the most ammo. They don't have the best ammo either. That belongs to the Dragon Slayers, but they have the second best ammo, certainly. Again, if we look here, we're also coming under siege fire. Heading back out. The more orcs that die, the smoother it will get. Again, I'm losing quite a few Moran on bows, and these guys are pretty good, so that is a bit of a shame. But again, we are returning fire on them, and the Rangers are falling. And again, we don't have much of a choice, really. The Dunedain Rangers are falling. Again, this is really just a skirmish before the main event, so we will now head back over to the front line, where Arnor to victory continues. These Dunedain Wardens are still there, but there are 71 of them left only, and they are exhausted. Unsurprisingly. My word. But once we get in there, you would be surprised. It might look like a lot of red on that map, but they are spread out. But those units that are in there are, of course, of just the same quality of the units on the outer vestiges of the battle. The Dunedain Wardens doing their best to hold against this continuing assault, and they've done an admirable job so far, but that won't continue. Eventually they will be forced to bend the knee, as it were. As we can see over here, there are more Uruks just standing around waiting their turn. In the background there we can see the third wave. Medj, I'm just going to call him. He will be coming forward soon. And as soon as that is the case, his army is certainly of better quality than the two that have come before him. There's a lot of Moranon units. There's obviously some Olag High. And that means we're going to really be able to make them feel it. The Heavy Maulers in particular will be a very important unit for dealing with some of these very defensive units like the Dunedain Wardens. But particularly the Fountain Guard, the shielded variant, which have been a real pain for us so far. Although, to be honest, if you look over here, Arnold to victory has used his mass pretty efficiently. He's managed to push back very well, so I would say that he's done a very good job on this gate of sort of turning the fight around, because initially it wasn't looking too good, but now it is. Now, catapult fire is being returned. Oh my word. That is a good shot. I mean, ideally we want the wall down, but Dunedain Bodyguard and Arthur Dane Knights. That is a nice shot. And Horton, interestingly enough, is not retreating off the walls. He's going down the ladders, which means he's going to try and engage what's left of Arnor to Victory's army, which is going to be an interesting play, it must be said. I mean, they're going to die if they go down there. They'll get they'll get a fair amount of kills, but they will die. But yes, it's a good move to try and remove this wall, because it gives us 3 openings that we can go through on foot, and we can still get up on top of the walls by going through the other 2 ladders on the wall that we cannot destroy. But yes, the trebuchet is getting quite a lot of work done, but interestingly enough, if memory serves me correctly... Oof. The Troll Slayers taking a hit. Not many of them, but enough. But yes, this trebuchet is going to be firing. The trebuchet is a lethal tool in this sort of situation, because we have to advance along this river crossing, and it's going to hurt us. If we look here though, there are some orcs that have sort of pushed their way through and are fighting to the death against Troll Slayers. I admire their enthusiasm, I really do. Right, let's see what's going on over here, shall we? And as we can see, the frames continue to be terrible. But we have forced our way through the first of the outer gates. That's the one that I'm going to be attacking through. And we'll go and see them in just a moment. But these Arthur Dane Knights, I think they realise the mistake they've made and are quickly trying to get off the wall, because this wall is going to fall pretty quickly. In fact, I'm going to get away from here before the frame rate tanks so horribly that the game cannot continue. But if we look over here, oh my. In fact, it might be worth me just turning the graphics down a little bit. Well, I mean, the frames have been this bad for some time, so I mean, if you're still here, then I'm sure you won't... Oh my word. Actually, yes, I will. If you would just pardon me for the cut. Well, that's slightly better. It's not a huge amount better, but needs must, I suppose. At least I'm now going to be recording in the right resolution, which is a step up. But But it really can't be helped when you're dealing with such numbers. And again, my thought on this gate was I'll just use my weight. You know, the Mountain Uruk blades are there. I'm also going to be following them in, my allies' forces in, with these 3 units of Uruks right away. And if we can use our weight, we should be able to deal with the Dol Amroth forces that are currently here. You know, the men-at-arms, they're good, but they're not going to be good against the weight of forces that we have here. And that's my thinking. And at this point, it is worth saying as well that the archers, for them, are largely out of ammo. So our forces were able to weather the storm. We've got the Mountain Uruk archers back there. And we've got my Morannon bows back there, which took the brunt of it, to be fair. But they are still alive, and they are now going to be able to fire unmolested into the enemy. But again, if we look down there, Dol Amroth are going to be doing their best to hold. How successful they will be is anyone's guess, but there goes the wall. We can see Dunedain Bodyguard find themselves on the wrong side of the wall. This is interesting. So, you know, provided we can take advantage of it, there's opportunity to be had over here. And I wonder if Medj is sending forward his forces now. Are those Medj's units? They are indeed. They are Uruk archers. So now we have the tail end of Wave 2 and the start of Wave 3 crashing on the enemy's frontal defence. We're still not within Osgiliath itself, but they're not going to be able to keep us out for much longer. That much is for certain. But yes, you know, those Dunedain Wardens, they're still down there, but they're now being directly supported with Arthedain men-at-arms. So that's fortunate for them. If we look back here, we very slowly make our way around through the frame rate issues. Arnor to victory, going to be doing his best. And this is what I'm going to be doing to Dol Amroth as well. Sort of trying to force my way in. And Arnor to victory couldn't really do much else, to be fair. There are men being deployed to the walls, more Orc Raiders trying to take it. There's now only Dol Amroth archers up there, so we can now try and get a bit of an elevation on the enemy, which is going to be important. And if we see over here, attacking the enemy trebuchet, if I can fight my way through the frames, we can see one of Arnor to victory's mountain trolls is sort of having his way with the trebuchet crew. So that is preventing the trebuchet from firing, covering Medj's advance a little bit. It's this sort of thing which is going to help us in the late game, because Medj's army needs to do, well, it needs to make inroads that the previous 2 did not. If it doesn't, then what's left of my forces on that side is certainly not going to be sufficient. But we shall see. We shall see. And again, we can see over here, well, oh my word. I can only apologise for the frame rate, but when you have a battle of this size, it really can't be helped. This is the other gate that the Misty Mountains are going to be able to go through, and they're going to be concentrating their forces over here on this one, which is probably for the best, because this area is actually slightly less defended, and they have more troops. So if we can get our way into the city, that's fine, while I occupy the other gate. As we can see, there is a ton of forces over there. Let's see if I can get a close-up without buggering up the camera work through the frames. But yes, as you can see, if we get in a little closer, the Dol Amroth men-at-arms are kind of out of position. They kind of bubbled out of the gate again, and that means we're going to be able to buckle their lines pretty quickly under the force of 1 unit of Mountain Uruk blades and 3 units of standard Uruks. That's going to be sufficient. Getting through the halberdiers is going to be a little bit more tricky, but we can still use our weight to our advantage on that one. And of course I have more units that I can commit over here. I've got 2 units of Morannon Uruks and 1 unit of heavy maulers, which will hopefully follow them in, and hopefully we'll finally be able to get into the settlement through one of these avenues. We can see these pikemen. We decided to try and focus them down, but they did retreat. We got a few of them. And again, kills are kills, and pikemen are particularly vulnerable to arrows. They're always a good target to go after just because they're so susceptible. They might not be too dangerous, but they're so weak to them. And here we see some Arnorian peacekeepers forming a shield wall at the gap. Again, it's going to be tricky for Arnor to keep holding these 2 choke points with the forces he has. The gate guards, well, not the gate guards, the gate guards. The gate guards are going to be the real problem we have. And again, there are Dunedain Bodyguard out here, aren't there? Yes, there are. There aren't many of them left, though. And this is the trebuchet crew that has been sent in after it ran out of ammo and was attacked by a troll. They are obviously going to be cut down very soon. And that's good. That means less men to clog the frame rate. That's the real fight here. The real victory will be when the frame rate starts to even out a little bit. As we can see here, there are more Orc Maulers from Medj, and he's got more Orc fodder, of course. Of course, his army is better, but there are still a few units of these lesser troops, which he is sending in. And he's going to send them in through the gate to, again, add to the mass of Arnor's push, which is a good move, because really the fodder, their best attribute is helping a mass push, I think. And again, we're being forced back a bit slightly as well. If we look here towards the back of the line, there's Gondor infantry that has come in to try and shore up the line. But honestly, it's up here on the walls where they should probably be most sort of concerned, if I'm honest. If we look here, there are Citadel archers trying to hold, and they will beat Orc raiders in melee, but you can sort of see slowly they're being forced to use units in places which just aren't as good. And soft spots appear, and that's where we can start to make our moves, make our inroads. If we go back over to the other front, which is now in full effect, the frames are getting slightly better. I don't know if you can see them through the YouTube compression, which I shudder to think what that will do to this video, honestly. We shall see. Again, the push is real. The Mountain Uruk blades at the front have largely been expended, but the Uruks, the standard Uruks, I think are a little bit tougher. They might not be as good on the attack, they are a little bit tougher, and just to make the point and hammer it home, I'm going to send in the slightly better Moranon Uruks, 1 unit of them. You can just see the density of troops over here. That should hold us in good stead. And over here, the defence is looking a little bit more bare bones. Tarnestean Guard is no joke either, but it's not the Halberdiers. And against the likes of the Mountain Uruk blades and heavy Goblin infantry en masse, they will be forced out of the way if they're not careful. So that is a possibility for us in this desert variant of Osgiliath. In terms of layout, Osgiliath has always been one of my favourite maps because it's so wide and there's options for the defenders and attackers in how to approach it. Obviously, for the time being, it's largely been a sort of a simple fight where it's been sort of a fight for the walls and the gates, but that will change. And that's one of my favourite things about Osgiliath, is when the first defences fall, how the defenders handle it and how they decide to approach it and where they decide to defend. Because I mean, the town centre is over here, so they could try and hold this square, or they could fall back slightly further and try and use the see-through buildings to their advantage. Obviously that won't be a thing for much longer. If we look over here, the gate is falling, there it goes. So now the 2 gates are gone, and that means we have 2 more avenues of attack that we can choose. And if we look at the percentages of kills, we've pulled it back a little bit. You know, it was worse than this, believe it or not, at one point in the battle. And we have pulled it back just a little bit. We can see the Misty Mountains trolls in the background. The Misty Mountains best units are being held back, which I do agree with, because we will need them in the late game to deal with the layer upon layer of quality. Maybe not so much the Arnor pikemen, but definitely Halberdiers. Winged swordsmen are still there as well, and in particular I'm thinking about Haven Guard and Dunedain Knights. There are some Haven Guard. That's not the sight I wanted to see over here. But if we look over here, you know, just from a distance we can see that defeat seems certain for the Dol Amroth men-at-arms. So my assault is doing okay at the moment. I'm losing men, of course, but it's doing okay. Now let's go back to the frame-tastic front line. More Uruks. There are Troll Slayers in melee. I mean, Horton is being quite bold here, it must be said, by attacking out through this area. Interestingly enough, this 1 Troll Catapult is sort of shooting into the units that are behind, and that includes Shielded Fountain Guard. No, it doesn't. Those are just banners. That's the Arnorian Peacekeepers, and in fact it looks like they took a huge hit. Yes, they did. Look at that. So definitely worthwhile. Massive damage there, although now I would certainly go for the Troll Slayers. Those Wardens are still holding. There are still some of them left. There are only 22 of them, but what heroes. Holding to the last with their round shields. It's like something out of 300. But these Uruks, defeat might seem certain, but they will eventually start to bite on these Troll Slayers. The Troll Slayers, of course, still have their hit points. Definitely one of my favourite units all around, the Troll Slayers. Their effectiveness at range and in melee is something that can't be overstated. More Uruks being sent up by Medj. Really doing his best to make his attack feel like it's being felt, and it is. Although, to be fair, you know, these units back here, they really need to get in. Arnold to Victory's General is now being committed as well, so Wave 2 is nearly all gone. But these Uruk Bodyguard, they should add some meat to this gate attack. They're sending up more men, sending up more Gondor infantry. Are they going to send them up onto the walls, I wonder? Or are they going to use them to try and help deal with this? I mean, they have forced us back, in all effect, to the gate once more. Very much a tug-of-war scenario at this gate. We have pushed them back with the Trolls and with some Uruks, but now, with the reinforcements that came from some Sons of Argonath, you can see down there, and the Gondor infantry was sufficient to push us back once again. Well, well, well. Oh, we can see more men coming up onto these walls. Let's get it. Oh my. Let's not get in too close, lest it crash. So yeah, these Orc Maulers, there are basically none of them. They're being cut down as soon as they enter. The Citadel Archers, they're no joke in melee. As long as they're not up against a unit with hit points, they can hold their own. They are pretty decent indeed. But what's this? We can see Veterans of Osgiliath now. I mean, the quality just doesn't end. I mean, the 3 defenders had some of the best armies you could ask for. And Maulers, well, they're not the best you can ask for. We do have some good units, though. My army in particular has got some nasty troops in it, which later... now this is very important. Through the other gate, the Misty Mountains are able to force their trolls, and they're going to attack into the back of this line over here and try and help me push through. And seeing this, I also committed my troops to try and push through. At this point, I was just sort of engaging them in melee, wearing them down. But you need to make this count, and there are some Nimrodel Rangers in melee trying to shore up the line. But it's not going to be sufficient here. The progress we're making on this gate is actually pretty good. So our outer assaults are making leeway much earlier than our frontal assaults did, but it's probably to be expected. I mean, the defence is out here, it's much less linear. There's a lot wider of an area you have to cover from skirmishers. Again, I'm just trying my best to force my way in. Just, you know, every inch. They're making me pay for it, though. But again, if you see there are Morannon Uruks in there and Mountain Uruk Blades. Slightly more bite than the regular Uruks. Just got to get these halberds out, and I have been shooting them in the side with my archers over here. There aren't many of them, but they still have ammo. That's the important thing. So they're not going to get much DPS, but they are going to get damage done. And that could tip the balance of the fight in my favour, but if we look over here, the dreaded Haven Guard make their advance. I am shooting them, trying to get rid of some of their hit points at least, but the Haven Guard is so scary. It's going to be so difficult to deal with them, and as if that wasn't enough, Talon Knights. Let's get a bit more of a closer view on them as they advance. As the frames tank yet again. Again, the Talon Knights are just like the more elite Swan Knights, and I do love the look of them. I mean, Dol Amroth as a whole, definitely one of my favourite factions. They are lethal in many aspects. You could argue that maybe the cost of a lot of their units is their Achilles heel, and I would agree, but I mean, it's an odd day when you consider that someone's weakness is that they are in fact too elite for their own good. And as you can see, I've done a good job at pushing in, but now these Talon Knights are going to get into the sides, try and really reinforce the line. It's going to be much more difficult to deal with them. The only unit I have over here that could really do a decent amount of damage against them would be the heavy maulers I've got in the background over there. Talon Knights are no joke, though. One of the units which can compare to the Dunedain Knights. I don't think there are any Wardens of the White Tower on the field, which is odd considering sort of shielded units are Gondor's thing. Gondor instead electing to bring their Sons of Argonath and their archers. But if we see here, the Dunedain Wardens and the Arthedain Man-at-Arms, they're finally starting to break, and over here is where we're now going to have the most luck. We can see Uruks pouring in, and over here you can see Orc fodder is routing, but the fact that they're able to rout in numbers means there are gaps. And this unit of, I believe, Peacekeepers, yep, it's Arnorian Peacekeepers, need to get in position quick unless we pour in. Peacekeepers are not the most solid unit in the world, though. They might be spears, but they're not the most elite. And there are only 89 of them, so even that won't be worth a huge amount of time. You can see Arthedain Men-at-Arms as well. There are Olag High in the background. I think the Olag High are seeing the gap as well, because they're starting to run. Oh my. Frames! My kingdom for some frames. Orc fodder are routing. There are Orc Raiders. Push! Now is the time, Medj. Because then, of course, that will mean that my wave doesn't have to deal with this outer assault, and we can start really making inroads into the streets of Osgiliath. We can just hear the relentless pounding of siege somewhere. As soon as these... oh... not good for us. That Uruk bodyguard took a direct hit, and that's one of the units we could stand not to lose. These Olag High should be able to charge in. There are gate guards in the background which will prevent their progress from getting too far into the city, but the fact that we're merely in the city is a step up. But yes, I believe the frame rate is tanking simply because there are so many battles of big clusters of troops. And of course that will start to fall off as we get into the settlement a little bit more. The troops will be a little less compact, although the gates on the outer wall will remain that way. So, alas, My poor frames. I knew ye not. I'll stop with the Shakespearean frames references, it's kind of strange. But here we have the ORCS. They're not really doing what Medj wants them to, or are they? What are they doing? We should get them in there. We should surround the units that are at the gate and finish them off. And then we can finally have an avenue into the city. Make the defenders sweat a little bit more. Well, it looks like he's just trying to force his way through the front, which is an interesting move. I mean, just merely getting in there alone would probably be worth it at this point. And again, you can see those burnt corpses of the Peacekeepers, really, and some of those Troll Slayers in the background. If we take a little bit further back there. Really the only things, the only casualties of the enemy that are inside the gate on this side. Now we need to change that. Because as time goes on, the more of Medj's wave gets depleted. And the more we don't need that to happen, because it's starting to get to the point now where attrition is going to start to affect us as well as the enemy. And honestly, the enemy have done a pretty good job at mitigating it.
Fought long and are becoming tired.
A lot of tired troops, a lot of tired orcs. We are 21% behind. So we've got a lot of ground to make up, but it is possible. As soon as we get inside the city, the percentages should start to swing a little bit more in our favour, simply because we have more numbers, and attrition is going to take a bit more of a toll on them. But we're going to need to use our siege and what's left of our ranged forces very effectively. The enemy still has siege, and he's using it to good effect. I didn't see quite where that landed, but it looked like it was a good place for them. Yeah, more or less. There aren't many burning corpses there, but more ORCS that they won't have to deal with later on. Let's go back over to the Dol Amroth front, shall we? And as we can see, I'm being peppered down by Pelegrin Marines from Donald Kingslayer. That's not what I wanted. And I'm being surrounded by Talon Knights. I mean, I am still trying to bubble through, and I was trying to force my way through, but in the end I realised I was taking too many casualties to make it worth it, so I decided just to try and go for the attrition approach, and then go for it. There are Maulers in there as well. It's basically just a mess of all my troops now. Meanwhile, the Misty Mountains gate, let's go over there, shall we? They're having a little bit more luck. They're not under the same amount of pressure. You know, admittedly, these are still veterans of Osgiliath, so they're no joke, but you can see the Tarnastian Guard are no longer there, really. And if we see in the background there, we can see some Black Uruk Warband. Gonna help. This looks like the most likely spot we're going to take on the outer wall. The other gate is merely my forces trying to occupy those elite Talon Knights, maybe do a little damage, bleed them of their hit points. And over here, we can see it's going to be... well, it's going to be costly to get through here, but we don't really have much of a choice regardless. So this gate over here, and the Arnorian gate on this side, we can see here, we're starting to get in. The ORCS have made their presence felt, and that means we can flank around on the other gate, because of course you can go under these arches. As soon as those Peacekeepers are out of the way, which should happen fairly soon, we will have them. And then up on these walls, the Citadel archers, you know, they're going to get attrition to death as well. I mean, you can see ORCS getting up onto the wall. We've also cleared a spot over there where ORCS are. So slowly and surely, we're starting to make moves into the streets of the city. It has been a long battle, and there is still a lot of battle left to be had. The remainder of my wave over there is going to reinforce Medj on this front side, and then that will be it. That will be us trying our best to get to the town centre. You can see in this archway here the shielded Fountain Guards still making their presence felt. But they're up against Uruk Bodyguard, still from Arnold to Victory's army, and standard ORCS, and by this point they're going to be feeling the effects of battle. They've been involved since the very first wave that Cole threw at these walls, and now it's looking like these walls are looking a lot less secure. More and more orcs. It's just... it might be a frame killer, but it is something. Another good versus evil matchup as well. I mean, it's not entirely lore friendly, of course. It's not a battle that actually happened, but Gondor, Arnor, and Dol Amroth, 3 factions with the blood of Numenor in them, fighting alongside one another to try and defend this mighty city. And over here, look at these Talon Knights. Again, these Pelegrin Marines are really... ironically, they're the thing that I'm most concerned about, because I think the attrition that I would be inflicting on the Talon Knights would be acceptable if not for the javelin fire I was taking. Because I'm so... I mean, imagine a catapult here. I mean, I'm lucky they didn't have siege equipment over here, to be honest. We see Orc bodyguards, the Misty Mountains general, waiting to commit himself to the fight. And again, this is something that wouldn't be amiss. I think that he's actually sent over some, he has some heavy goblin infantry to sort of reinforce this area to make sure it doesn't fall, because it's very important that we keep them occupied over here. But over here, they have managed to sort of reinforce. There's some Citadel bodyguard, Gondor infantry, and some Edholland halberdiers, so they're not letting us have this gate either. Just more death, more quality as well. It's so brutal. But if we look over here, again, we've pulled it back 1 further %, I believe, but that isn't enough. We need to make them feel the effects a little bit more than that. And again, looking over here, these are Norian peacekeepers. They never really stood a chance against the torrent of Uruks and Olag High, so it really sucks for them. Again, I don't really want to zoom in too much because I fear that it might crash if I do that. Later on in the battle I will be able to when the frame rate calms down a little bit, shall we say. This is actually good for us though. The fact that they pushed us out, it means we're able to deploy our numbers a little more. The shielded fountain guard should fall by the wayside a little more. If we look here up on the walls, they're trying to reinforce it with some... It looks like there's some Dunedain, yeah, there's some Dunedain bodyguard, there's more archers. But ultimately we are now starting to take the wall above the main gate. And the secondary gate is basically ours now. We have taken it. However, now we have to get through some gate guards. Although the gate guards look like they're falling back, I think they realise that they don't want to just be overwhelmed. They're an important unit which could be used later. So these Arthedain men-at-arms will be forced to cover the retreat of these men. Bad news bears for them, because Medj's army is now starting to make inroads. Such a heavy orc force. Again, my army is now ready. I think my army's actually starting to come across. Yes, it is. So I'm starting to commit my wave, and that means the final wave is here. And it might not look like we've made much progress, but I did say at the top of the battle that it is relatively close. And we do pull it back, but do we pull it back enough? That is the question. We still have siege, we still have range, some good range as well. And we're going to need to use that within the city's interior if we're going to have any success at all. But yes, I think it might be prudent actually if I... Well, I would be amiss, let's say, if I didn't mention the importance of the outer defences. Because we have, we are running out of men here, but, the attrition that we're inflicting on the enemy is going to be significant, but we can't afford too much more of that ourselves either. If you can see, you can see the blue triangles in the background there, of the blackbacks and the mountain orc berserkers that we've got in reserve. But it's starting to really grind on us, this outer defense. We have actually managed to sort of push them back a little bit over here. Black Uruks of the mountains, they're no joke. Getting into these Talon Knights. Let's try and zoom in a little bit and hope that it doesn't collapse on us. But yes, I think now we shall... well, there's still javelins flying in, so... It's still going to be tough. It's going to be tough indeed. But we shall see. We shall see. So I've made a little cut. I felt it was prudent because there was a little bit of a gap where nothing really happened other than the fights that were already on. But as you can see, the flanking force from Medj has now sort of forced its way through, leading the way with Uruks, backing them up with Olag High. They will come up against Sons of Argonath, but they are depleted.
The foe has taken control of the castle.
Oh my, we've been in control of the castle all this time and we didn't know it? Isn't that strange? So yes, I now have a few units up. Obviously these Uruks have been attacked by archers as they advanced. But I am also trying to sort of send some reinforcements up onto this wall over here. Oh my god, the frames are still not terrific, obviously. There are still Dol Amroth archers up there, but now the Olag High are there, and the Olag High should squash them with impunity. The Sons of Argonath are actually trying to escape, which is probably a good call, otherwise they will die. And the gate guards have also repositioned themselves to be on this wider stretch, which is potentially a good idea. The gate guards are one of the better pikes. As long as they're backed up, they will hold that wide street very, very easily. These Fountain Guard, however, will eventually fall by the wayside. They are now surrounded. And over here, there isn't an attack. Well, there is. Some of the Uruks were sent forward sort of as fodder, really, because they were sent into Swan Knights and Haven Guard. But we now have a way in. This is our first way in, and we need to make it count. And Medj is going to be setting up some of his units over here. I'm also now committing my wave, of course, so I will be doing the same. Unfortunately for us, over here, our attack has... well, it hasn't faltered. It is still occupying the enemy forces over here to an extent. If we get in a little closer and hope it doesn't crash, cross your fingers. We have Gondor infantry, of course, but really the problem are the Talon Knights. The Talon Knights are the real problem. The Marines are now out of ammo, so they're just in the melee. They'll probably die pretty quickly, but you know, also like the dregs of my archers that were out of ammo, I'm just committing them in as well. It's most important really that we just hold them here, hold these units in position. If they start to run away, they'll take damage, so they have to be here, they have to be occupied. Now let's head back over to the Misty Mountains Gate. The frame rate is steadily picking up. I'm starting to be able to sort of control the camera with a bit more fluidity. And this blob fight is probably one reason for it, because we are slowly starting to break through here. These halberdiers are surrounded, orc bodyguards are in here. Mostly orc bodyguards. There are also heavy goblin halberdiers, and they're armor piercing, so they should do pretty well. Again, let's get in a little closer now that the frame rate's starting to pick up a little bit. You can see these halberdiers trying to poke through the bodyguards. They will actually do cost effectively quite well against the bodyguards, but the important thing is we just get them out of the way so we have a way into the city. The Misty Mountains has reserves that you can commit, of course. Very attack-focused units in reserve, the Blackback Berserkers and the Mountain Orc Berserkers. Mountain Orc Berserkers not great, but the Blackbacks certainly are. So if we can keep them in reserve for a little while longer, it should hold us in good stead. Now if we look over here, we can see Arnold to victory. His Uruk bodyguard is still in play. Unbelievably, his general lives, despite being part of an attack force which was largely destroyed. There's some Orc raiders moving up. I'm also charging in some Mordor Moran on Uruks, just to make sure we don't actually lose this position now that we've gained it. The enemy could have counter-attacked. There are Haven Guard in the vicinity. One player has admitted defeat. That was Cole. You know, he's been gone for quite a while, to be honest with you. But he finally decided to admit defeat. I think it was because he had perpetually routing men that wouldn't leave the battle. Meanwhile, if we look up here on these walls, the fight continues. There are trolls. Are those the troll catapult trolls? I think they might be. So yeah, they're being squashed, however, by Moranon Uruks, and that means that this defense up on the wall is not long for this world. They are being edged out. If you hear me drinking, I am now drinking tea. I decided to take a pause in the recording, honestly, just because it was taking a long time. This might be the longest battle I've shown yet. Maybe. I mean, it should be, based on how long we were playing for, but you can't really account for lag, obviously, and a 4v4 with this many men. If you think that this frame rate is bad, you should have been there for the actual event. My word. And the frame rate is slowly starting to get better. You can slowly start to see even the vestiges of a running animation as I'm moving forward some Moranon Uruks, and Medj is sending forward some Orc Raiders. We're going to try and get into the backs of this attack, well, this defense over here, which we need to, because the last thing we need is being pincered as we try and make our advance through that square. Come on, camera. There we go. Last thing we need is to be pincered by Talon Knights, and my attacking force through this gate with the backup from the Misty Mountains is not going to last too much longer, so we do need to surround them. We need to get into them. Are those Haven Guards in there? No, just Talon Knights. Oh, and Sons of Argonath. And Winged Swordsmen. Whew, the quality that they brought. And interestingly enough, now the enemy is trying to sort of try some delaying tactics with a lesser unit, as these Gondor infantry try to meet these reinforcements. You can see these Moranon Uruks, and at the last second I dart around the fountain. So yeah, trying to get around these Gondor infantry so that we can reinforce the line that is most needed. The Orc Raiders from Medj just charge right in to occupy them. Of course, my units, I have to constantly click to get them to do what I want to do, because they are technically engaged by this unit of infantry now. But yes, there are fights on the city streets now, and that is the important thing for us, because we can now try and start to use our numbers. We also have some heavy maulers from Medj over here. The heavy maulers should very handily deal with the Gondor infantry. Let's go back over here, shall we? So yeah, we're starting to set up. I've got a unit of Uruks, 2 units of Uruks actually. The Uruk bodyguard from Mordor as well. There's still the sort of surround fight going on over here with the Shielded Fountain Guard. They'll hold, but you know, they're doomed. And also over here, there's the final stand of the veterans of Osgiliath and the Gondor Citadel archers up on this wall. You've got my Uruks over here, and you've got Medj's Moranon Uruks here. Fighting back to back, but ultimately this wall will finally fall. Finally it belongs to us, and we need to make it count. How we do this is up to us, although here we see Medj sending some of his Moranon Uruks down from the top. And I believe that is his troll catapult. Yes, it is. There's only one troll left. Sending them down off the wall because they don't need to be there anymore. Better to have them in the streets where they can be more useful.
Our enemy has command of the castle.
Here we see more Uruks. There's actually some Dunedain bodyguards up here, although you know they're not really doing anything. It's possible we all just forgot about them. More of my units are streaking across the river. Moran on heavy maulers. Moran on heavy maulers, and I believe my catapult. Let's go and take a look, shall we? Yes, and indeed after the battle we were commenting on how fast the troll catapults move, even with the lag, because Cold Front had set up his ballista, and one of the topics we had set up, well, we talked about before the battle was how or was it his catapult? Dol Amroth's catapult. So yes, he'd set this up in an attempt to shoot it as it crossed the river, but it got across the river before he could even respond to it. He also had his ballista there, so it got across the river before he was able to fire at it, and I was able to get it into the city and behind the walls, and that's going to be key. That's going to be absolutely crucial. Oof, man, this frame. The blob fight is real once more. Shut up, announcer. But yes, the catapult we have is going to be absolutely key. We're going to need to use it. I did actually lose one as it was crossing the river, but it wasn't too dire. It was still functional, and that's the important thing. My Moran on ORCS are kind of spread out, but they are still reinforcing this area, although to be honest, our attack over here has been completely broken. So, unfortunately, we kind of didn't make it in time. But now it's just going to be a matter of holding these guys off while we make our full attack. Obviously, these Gondor infantrymen were butchered by a numerically superior force of raiders and heavy maulers. And now this force will be able to engage the forces that just threw off one of our gate attacks. But over here, the Misty Mountains making their presence felt. Only a few units of out-of-position halberdiers remain. There's a few veterans of Osgiliath as well. But this is the end for this gate's defence, so we're going to be able to get in via 2 avenues of attack now. Well, technically 3 once we take the wall. So it's going to be interesting. But now the next focus of our assault is going to be this square with this ruined building in the centre. And it's going to be up to the enemy how brutal this attack is going to be, because if they retreat, we'll probably take this area and then it will be on to an assault of the town centre. But if they decide to defend with everything they have, the battle will be decided right here. It's going to be interesting because at this point... Right. Well, at this point, it's going to be down to the enemy how this battle goes. We can only attack, and a lot of that depends on the enemy. I've got a unit of ORCS making sure they can't counter-attack, and there you can see I shot my troll catapult through the see-through buildings. I got a nice hit on some Haven Guard and got some collateral on some Swan Knights as well. Exactly the sort of target you want to go after. The second shot was not as successful, but again, these see-through buildings are kind of bullshit, but they have been using them to enormous effect on us on the approach, with those buildings in the background over there. So, you have to be prepared to take it as well, and this is the situation they find themselves in. So I managed to cut down a decent amount of Haven Guard and Swan Knights, of which I'm very grateful for, because those are 2 scary units that we need to get out of the way as quickly as we possibly can. Now, I decided that I would send the majority of my army around here to attack this pike line and this Gondor spear line, because these 2 frontal units are honestly not fantastic. If we attack with weight, we should be able to push in without too much of an issue, and then, hopefully, we will be able to really make our presence felt in the square, whereas over here the front line is made of Fountain Guard and Gate Guards. Not great, particularly when you see that the army over here is still fighting and still taking casualties to Fountain Guard, and the balance is now evenly matched. I mean, that just goes to show how tough the Fountain Guard really are. I've still got a unit of ORCS over there, but more and more of my men are pouring across the river, as well as Medj with his ORC bodyguard. You've got my Moran on halberds coming across now as well. I've got more heavy maulers. The catapult is doing its best, but again, I'm going to be moving that around, trying to get it to have good shots. Moran on bows from Medj. And over there we have my Temple Guard, going to be very important. Very tough in terms of our areas, or so you may think. Again, that's probably an issue that's best left for its own video. A view through the window for a moment there. So these Ed Holland halberds taking on from the front these heavy maulers. And I believe Medj also sent over some Moran on ORCS. No, that was my unit of Moran on ORCS that's still there. But yes, this force is now turning into sort of a rear guard for us as we try and make our main assault on the square. Heavy maulers do a number on heavily armoured units though, and every single one of the factions we are opposing relies on armour to an extent, especially Gondor. There's the Eric bodyguard of Arnor to victory, still moving around, still kicking, and over here we can see, finally the fall of this gate. But one thing I can say that this battle has shown in spades is that if you defend from the front, commit quality to the front, you can make your enemies pay for it dearly. And it hurts. Now, here comes my first assault on this line of pikes. Obviously, you know, these heavy maulers getting into the face of the pikemen. It's going to be difficult though. I'm going to need to reinforce them. Otherwise, they're just going to get pushed back by the pikes. The catapult crew is also going to be committed to try and add a little bit of extra weight to this line. I'm sending these ORCS into the side. I'm also trying to move up my catapult. Now, here's an interesting observation. And this is kind of a spoiler for later on in the battle, but it's kind of relevant now, because if I don't mention it now, I will forget it, because it's not the sort of thing you easily see in a replay. These Temple Guard, you know, the best archers Mordor can afford. And this doesn't really say poorly of them, because they are very good. I expend basically all of the ammunition from them, shooting through the invisible wall, so it is technically a straight shot they have against these gate guards. They lose approximately 12 men for pikemen. That, to me, says something is wrong, because definitely, even though they're well armoured and they're pikemen, a unit of that quality should be getting more kills on pikemen, and in the end they did not. So, but it doesn't really matter too much anyway, because the Temple Guard are basically as effective in melee as they are at range. So, and I did peel the hit points off the gate guards in the end, so they do take casualties from other sources. Now here's a bit of a problem. We have Marines, and presumably they still have javelins left, which is going to be absolutely appalling for my attack if they're able to get their ammunition expended, because this is the avenue which I've decided to attack from. Nice wide choke point here, which my numbers should be able to take more advantage of. If we look back here at the percentages killed, we've pulled it back to 20% exactly.
The enemy is no longer in command of the castle.
We can see the Moranon bows as well, sort of getting some shots into the side here. There are, however, fire arrows. Oh no, those are fire arrows from us. Now, I used my catapult to try and kill some of these Belfalas Marines. I thought they were going to throw their javelins, but it turns out they were actually... Well, this unit that I was targeting were actually out of ammo, so I decided to change my target from them because... Well, at least I did eventually. I got some fantastic shots off of them though, so the reinforcements for their line are going to be cut down greatly. They are holding this area as well with a unit of... Excuse me. Oh, my allergies are really bad. Anyway, regardless of my personal plight, they only have an Arthur Day men-at-arms to deal with the Misty Mountains forces, which should be committing now. It's now or never for us. We need to make our numbers felt, because otherwise we won't have the numbers advantage or the quality advantage, and we will be doomed. But as we can see, I'm committing my halberdiers to this front line. Defeat seems certain for the troops they have here, because the troops they have here are not of huge quality. And indeed, if you look over here, there is in fact a bit of an avenue we can use to attack through. Isn't that interesting? And also my troll catapult is still very much in place, looking menacing. The enemy do have siege yet, but they haven't decided to attack it for whatever reason. And I believe I'm actually trying to get some shots off. I don't know what's on. I believe on the enemy catapult as it's moving around. There's the ballista crew. But yes, this is it, the line battle within the city. The fact that we're in the city is just comforting at this point. You can see the enemy's idle trebuchets in the background there. The clutter of battle, as it were. But yes, this is going to be a long video indeed. The battle itself was around 3 hours. If you cut out the lag and sort of the idle time that was cut out at the start, it's probably still close to 2 hours this battle's going to be. Again, it's a big one. It's a very long and arduous one. In fact, at this point, if you look over here, there were reinforcement that was sent in. You know, still Orc Raiders, but you can see these Uruk bodyguard from Medj that were deployed. They're going to try and deal with these Talon Knights once and for all. And the Orc bodyguards and the Misty Mountains also deployed into the backs of these winged swordsmen. There are also some other units running around as well. But the idea is that now this force over here will be dealt with overall. Yes, it's going to be an interesting thing, because that means this line here will have more reinforcements, more weight. Unfortunately, we have Citadel Bodyguard coming up, but now the enemy is attacking my catapult. They miss it, but they do manage to hit some of my Uruks. And unfortunately, I can't really afford to go for the enemy catapults to try and disable them. I need to even the infantry fight up a little bit. My Sauron's Will is being committed. Now, the Sauron's Will, maybe not the most durable, but they do have hit points, and they do quite a lot of damage. So, again, it's just another unit. That was a narrow miss from the catapult there. And again, this is another brutal, brutal fight of attrition within the city now. If we look over here, we can see that I have a unit of ORCS just sort of stationed here, just waiting. I'm still shooting into those Arnold Gate Guards. I've killed a few, but definitely not enough to make it worth it. A close range hit on Marines and Pikemen. Again, not really the target I was going for. I wanted the Citadel Bodyguard. But again, beggars can't be choosers, and we are turning into beggars. The only unit we have is those heavy maulers. That's the last unit that I'm bringing across, and then everything is here. It's all or nothing. I think that was friendly fire from the enemy, actually. But again, we can see one of my catapults is gone. We can see I'm bringing up my Olag High, and I'm going to try and send it over to the same area I put my Sauron's Will, because over here it's really just Marines, and that's a lightweight front line. The Olag High will certainly be able to smash their way through them in a hurry. Look at this, the frame rate is still pretty poor because there's still a lot of men in action. In the background there you can see my ORCS, and there's a big charge going on in the Arnold Gate Guards. We don't expect to break through, but we do want to engage the pike, so if we break through here, we can attempt to surround them, get some nice hammer and anvil off, and honestly over here it's looking like we very much could break through. My catapults are now destroyed, so I'm going to commit the crew to the same place as the Olag High, more mass. The enemy are going to need to commit more infantry if they want to have success here. Because look at this, the push is real, and if we look at the percentages, we've pulled it back a little bit more. A little bit more. It was 20, now down to just 15, well, yes, 15. And again, we need to make more inroads than that. We're almost in the final 10% of our army, so we need to do major damage. And unfortunately, the catapult, while it did get a few good hits, probably not enough, not to the extent that it was needed. And well, if we go over here, I can only apologise for the frame rate. I didn't think it would be this poor. The ballista crew is ready to charge in to reinforce the Fountain Guard and the Arnold Gate Guards, but again, this is a lost cause. This is just to occupy them. Attack from multiple directions, as they say. Yes, the Sauron's Will are in there. Victory does seem certain, but now the enemy, I think, realised how bad this could get, and Coldfront deployed a unit of his Haven Guard. And Haven Guard, of course, will deal with my trolls, but the trolls are doing damage, and they've made a hole, so if I can take advantage of that with another unit, unfortunately I have just the thing. Temple Inquisitors. Temple Inquisitors, for me, still the best shock unit in the game. They are unbelievably strong, as they will demonstrate, I'm sure, but whether they are strong enough to turn the tide of this battle, the balance of power is against us, but it's not impossible that we can still win this. We shall see, as they say. Sauron's Will, Olag High and Temple Inquisitors. It's a strong part of the line. I'm surprised they didn't go after this with a catapult, if I'm honest, unless they ran out of ammunition. Meanwhile, where are the Misty Mountains? We can see them in the distance over there. Mountain Orc Berserkers, Blackbacks. We'll see. That was a catapult hit, I believe. Yes, they're trying to go for this other weaker block because I think they can send them wavering and, well, breaking, which they can. Yes, the Temple Inquisitors. Overall, they could be my favourite unit in the game as it stands. Obviously, with the new patch, well, mini patch, obviously it's 0.92. That might change. That might change, but again, we'll see. We'll see. For now, though, the Haven Guard and the Temple Inquisitors, it's like the Battle of the Titans. I mean, they're both very similar in the fact they don't actually have armour piercing. You know, they are based around their pure attack score and the fact that for shock units they are very, very durable. And over there in the background we can see my other Temple unit, my Temple Guard, being committed to the fight. They're very good in melee, not quite as good as the Temple Inquisitors, of course, but still very, very good nonetheless. My general is in there. And so this is it, really. I mean, if we look back over here, the final force. Again, the Halberdiers, holding on for dear life. They will fall by the wayside, of course. And then this force will be free to reinforce wherever they are needed. There's some Uruk bodyguard from Arnold to victory over there as well. But Misty Mountains needs to get a move on. They need to get these troops in there. They need to attack from another direction, and indeed they are. Sending in their Blackback Berserkers. I would have waited for their Mountain Orc Berserkers though, because while they'll tear through the Arthedain men-at-arms very quickly, it's best to push with all of your units rather than just one. But again, this is more kills, which are going to be absolutely crucial moving forward. Again, I don't know if you can notice that I turned down the vegetation quality now that they look decidedly 2D and their shadows look very, very blocky. But yes, now I have one unit that I have not committed, and it's that unit of Moranon Maulers. But this, oh my word, the frame rate is like getting close there. In the background there we can see some dismounted Swan Knights. We can see more battle-ready Dunedain being committed. I think that's Dunedain Knights, yeah. So the enemy have decided, seeing as we have committed everything, they too shall commit everything, and the battle will be decided in this square. And again, this front is not looking healthy. I know it was only there to occupy, but the Gate Guards and the Fountain Guard is a very, very heavy duty defence indeed. This push over here though, the line is starting to buckle a little bit under the weight of all these quality units, and I think I saw the gap, and I decided that I would move in my final unit of heavy maulers to try and take advantage of that. It's the only thing I can do at this point, is to commit and hope that what I have left is have a high enough quality that we can win. But unfortunately there are Swan Knights and Dunedain Knights and all of the worst of what the enemy has to offer. And indeed over there are some Troll Slayers being committed to melee, and ironically over here the Blackback Berserkers have taken a few losses. And this is what you do if you commit them on their own, because they aren't durable. They are very damaging, but they are not durable. Now admittedly the Mountain Orc Berserkers that are reinforcing them are not durable either, but just having more units, having more of a meat shield there, is enough to give your units the durability they require. There's also Sons of Argonath in that mess, to be fair, so again. But at least we're attacking from multiple directions, we are making them work for this. There goes a general. I believe that is actually the Gondorian general. So, all is not lost. But again, you can see my Moranon Maulers and my Temple Guard getting into the side here. Now they're being met by Swan Knights, however. But this is the front line that matters, because this is the one that we're seemingly having the most luck with. Although these Dunedain Knights are reinforcing the Haven Guard defeat, they're being pushed back by a mix of Temple Inquisitors, Uruk Bodyguard, and Sauron's Will. Sauron's Will you can see from their slightly darker cloaks in the middle there. Look at all the orcs though. But ultimately, is it more than... well, we're pushed it back to just 13%, so we are closing the gap, but it's not quickly enough. We really need to get a move on. In fact, at this point, this is where we might as well start to fast forward. I have a perfect view of all the fronts that are in action. Let's go to ×6 and hope that everything doesn't melt down. Well, that's not a good sound. Oh my, this lag. It might actually be faster on ×2 speed. So yes, ×2 speed it shall be, and as you can see, I'm slowly starting to make real inroads against the Swan Knights. They're being pushed back, and there's still more reinforcement streaking down, although it is turning into a bit more of a dribble. This is really... it's really starting to look a little bit bleak, because while we're starting to really make some dents in the enemy defence, I mean, if you look here, it's still... well, it's now 12%. You know, we've closed the gap again. But it's not quickly enough, and eventually we will suffer from the unit cliff, and it looks like we're going to suffer from that before the enemy is. But we're still making... again, this is what I mean about the attack-defense balance. Early on, the defenders are obviously going to have more casualties to their name, but as the battle goes on, the attackers do get back into it. Meanwhile, if we look back here, we can see some Fountain Guard. We can see the catapult from Dol Amroth trying to get into the battle. Mountain Orc Berserkers are trying to push through. This line is honestly looking pretty poor at this point. It's starting to fall away, but again, just when we think we're breaking through somewhere, the enemy always had a unit of quality ready to plug the gap, and in this case it was the Tirith Air Wardens. Again, a Spearman with 2 hit points, that's going to be sufficient to plug the gap a little longer, and the few Mountain Orc Berserkers that are getting through are just going to get butchered by quality units anyway at this point. So yes, I think that's the Orc Bodyguard for the Misty Mountains. Notice Heavy Goblin Halberdiers. Meanwhile, if we look back over here, we can see my Uruks. They don't fall, they don't break. They're not, I mean, they're dying slowly to the Gate Guards, but they will fight on. And again, this is the front that is very important. And here we go. This is where the battle will end, one way or the other. And again, they're going to have to commit more men, because these, you know, not the Dunedain Knights, but the Swan Knights, they're being handily beaten by my Temple Guard and Heavy Maulers. Again, there's a lot of AP in there, and the Swan Knights, you know, they rely on their armour and their defence more than their attack, so they're basically, you know, it's something they can't really do much about. They're certainly something which offers a lot of protection to a unit like Haven Guard, but if they're on their own like this, they can be overwhelmed. The Swan Banner. Oh, this battle's been going on so long, my voice is starting to get dry. Now the Tirithea Wardens, I think the Haven Guard are going to engage this army over here from the Misty Mountains, and the Tirithea Wardens are sort of trying to shore up this line a little bit more. Again, even on ×2 speed, the battle grinds on. And in fact, at this point, it might be worth even cutting out a little bit, because this grind goes on for a long time indeed, let me tell you. More units in the background there, some underground goblins. Just again, you know, we seem to find a few more units when we need them, but it's ultimately units that aren't going to be of any sort of quality. Here we go then. Tirithea Wardens getting into those Morannon heavy maulers, but yes, I believe now is the time. Now we shall... Well, now I think it would be best if I did make a cut, because as we can see, it's fairly obvious at this point when you turn around. Like, there aren't many men over here. Well, to be honest, you look here, there isn't actually any defenders left that aren't engaged, or at least near the front line. These pikemen, bit of a concern. But again, this front over here is done for, essentially. And the problem we have is that if we can't engage those pikes, they could easily just turn around. Now I'm trying to force my way through with weight, try and get a Crescent Moon surround off. But unfortunately, even as I do this, it doesn't really matter too much. Because, of course, these Dunedain Knights, they are right here. And that means that they can just plug the gap again with yet another unit of genuine quality. And the more that we fight, the more that our men get tired. If we look here, you know, we've pulled it back to within 9%. This late game push is impressive, but it isn't looking like it's going to be enough, especially, you know, more reserves again. Pikemen, not the scariest thing in the world, but if we look over on this front, the Haven Guard were all it took to tip the balance in this direction. The Orc Bodyguard are the only thing left. The Blackback Berserkers, their lack of durability let them down in the end, and they were not able to force their way through this avenue. So the square, they have managed to hold the square. Again, you know, the line is curved. And if we look over here, we can see the Temple Inquisitors. But again, there are only 47 of them. The Uruk Bodyguard of Medj is there as well, though. But really, it's starting to look bad for us. 97% of our forces gone. Only 3% of us, 12% of the enemy remain. And again, we've got pikemen coming in to help hold the line. It's just the sort of thing we didn't want to see. It's not looking good at all. I tell you, I need a drink. My throat is very dry after all this. But look at this. It's... Again, I can only apologise for the frame rate. You know, it can't be helped, I guess. But ultimately, when you have a battle this size, you know, it's unavoidable. 30,000 men. I believe the biggest battle ever done in Medieval 2, and it was in Standard Third Age, I believe, was Minas Tirith. I believe it was something Pixelated Apollo did, and it was about 55,000 men, I think. And the frame rate for that was apparent. Well, it was chunky, shall we say. So again, with a battle like this, it's something that's unavoidable, particularly when the battle it devolves into sort of blobs. And if we look here at the balance of power, again, it's 9%. We're not being able to make any more inroads, and so at this point, it's obvious that the defenders are going to have victory this day. We don't have enough mass to force our way through anymore. And more importantly, they're going to flank around if they so choose, or they could just reinforce the line. Either way, this is going to be it. So I will skip ahead to the end, because I think this battle has gone on far too long anyway. So we shall skip ahead to the final stand, I think. So as you can see, this is it. The last stand. This unit of Medj's Uruk Bodyguard is basically the only thing left. There's a few individual Temple Inquisitors in there as well. But yeah, this is it. The end. And 8 percentage points was the difference, and that is how it remains, I can tell you. And anything that's within the 10 percentage bracket for a for a 4v4, or at least a game with, not 4v4, it's a 5v3. But a game that has this sort of level of players in it, so having a full lobby, that's pretty close. And you saw, you know, they've committed basically everything. You know, we forced them to commit everything. In the end, probably what lost us the battle was a few things. I mean, obviously, their quality was almost too much to bear. And also, maybe the siege weapons, I think, was probably the thing that did us in. I mean, they were able to get some nice shots on us as we crossed the river. If they didn't have any of those shots, we would have stood much more of a chance, but in the end, that's part and parcel of attacking, especially on a map like Osgiliath where you have to cross a river. The hybrid of the river crossing and siege maps that is Osgiliath. Player has admitted defeat. I believe that's Arnor to victory. He still had a few men left alive until right close to the end, and then in the end it was just me and Medj making our final stand, and indeed, for me, I was basically dead at this point. I died before him, essentially. But then I was right at the front. I've still got 3 Temple Inquisitors. He's got 17 Uruk Bodyguard. Oh. Well, that was a piece of my desk gone. No matter. For surely the force... There goes my general. The Nazgul. Interestingly enough, in the next mini-patch, Mordor have got some indirect buffs, I would say. Well, you could say some of them are direct, to be fair, because, not many factions have got Mordor's thing. I think that's it. I think they're cheering for victory. Indeed it is. This is the end. The end of days. Well, technically it's the victory for men. But yes, as you can see, 10,000 kills for Gondor. That was Donald Kingslayer. Obviously, he was the one that was front and centre at the front defence, attacking us as we came across the river, so it's not too surprising he got the most, but 10,000, I've only ever seen that level of kills once before, and it was from Sin of the Dark Cloud when he had a full cavalry stack against largely trash Isengard units. So yes, that's an interesting point. Obviously Arnor and Dol Amroth also doing very, very well for themselves, essentially wiping out 1 army each. And it's also no surprise to see that as you go up in quality of the armies, our kills also increase. So obviously Cole getting the least amount of kills, he went in first. Then Arnor to victory, getting slightly more. Medj getting slightly more than that. The Misty Mountains going around the outside, having a bit more room to manoeuvre, getting slightly more than that. And then myself, I was the only one with any super high tier units, not counting Olag High, so I got the most kills because of that, largely. And also because I didn't have to deal with as much siege weaponry as the others did. And that, I think that was what tipped the balance in the end, the siege weapons. The enemy used them very well, and they should get credit for that. So the Defenders won. The Defenders won a 3v5, and obviously they had all of their best units, but you cannot do a match like this without that being the case. And I hope you enjoyed this marathon of a match. Obviously this is a Horton scenario. They all are like this, so if you see another Horton scenario that either I'm doing, or Cold Front is doing, or someone else is doing, it will likely be this long as well. And, obviously down in the description below, there will be the links to the ModDB, to the Discord, and obviously to Cold Front's channel. He does largely battle replays as well, but he's also a little bit more involved in the RP campaigns that go on the Discord, so you're likely to see a little bit more of that from him than me. So, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for the next battle, which I believe will be another scenario.